This is another episode of Faith in Media, the Christians in Media podcast. I'm so delighted to be with our guests today, Tabitha Webb and Richard Haley. Tabitha and Richard, thank you so much for joining us at Faith in Media. Please say hi, let us know kind of a little bit about yourselves. We just want to hear that.
Right, well, my name's Tabitha Webb, but please for here call me Tabby, because Tabitha's when I'm in trouble.
I love that.
Which is too often. But yeah, Tabby Webb's actually fine.
And Richard. So I'm Richard. My background actually is more in engineering. So I had a bit of a detour into more of the media stuff, whereas Tabby's background has always been media. So
that's amazing. And we've brought you on today because you already share such fascinating journeys. You've already mentioned that you've come from quite diverse backgrounds. How did you guys connect together in the first place? Because we know you as the curators and the originators of this incredible musical called Love Beyond. But tell us a little bit about where the journey kind of started for you both, and how did you find your paths crossing?
You better start that one first.
Yeah, I in our local church, I shared the vision of the show, played some of the concept music and shared my heart really with where I saw it going. And we had a lovely couple in our church who were traveling in between mission and suggested that I contacted their friend's daughter. And that's all I knew. And they said, oh, she's in a play in London. Perhaps she can help you out with some stuff. So I gave this stranger a call, and that was Tabby, and arranged for Tabby to come around and hear my music and hear what I'd put together so far. And she cried when she heard it. It was really bad. No, that's not why she cried.
There's one song in particular really caught me, let's say.
She cried, hopefully, because it emotionally touched sort of her spirit. And we just hit it off, really. And ever since, I've been her annoying big brother, and she's been an annoying little sister.
Yeah, I'm fulfilling that quite well. So much so that a few years ago, my husband and I actually upsticked from where we used to live in Kent to live near Richard and our other friend Steve, so that we could write more together and continue this journey a bit closer to home.
Wow.
So at the time when Richard invited me over to hear it, I'd kind of done that for a couple of people, hearing a few people ask if I could critique their music, because I was in Phantom of the Opera in the West End at the time, playing Christine. So in that job, when you're doing 8 shows a week, it's pretty full on. Doing 8 shows a week, it's a big old job, and I didn't have kids at the time, so I had some daytime time. Came to meet you in a pub garden, didn't I? And I heard the music, and Richard had a few songs, and his kind of idea of the kind of the umbrella idea and the vision, a really strong God-given vision in his head about what he wanted to do. But I'd kind of done a few of these things before, but something absolutely struck me. I need to be involved in this, which had never happened before. And rather than just, I was like, I want to hear some of your music. I'm not even sure how it happened, but we ended up writing together. Following a couple of years later, I was pregnant and came out of the shows to have my family. And what else do you do when you're, off work for 9 months, but sit at a piano with your cat and, write music? And we were back and forth, weren't we? Crafting lyrics and music together and crafting the show.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of got to my limit, I guess, in my musicality, because I was set to sit at the piano and play and sing what was in my head. But my range was like this, and Tabby introduced me to a range that was like this, and so we just started to redevelop a lot of the music, go into stratospheric heights and lows, and then just develop it all more together and make it a far more beautiful piece. I think a sophisticated piece as well.
That is an incredible story of just crossing paths and It just sounds so non-coincidental and so intentional and purposeful all at the same time. What kind of led you to the original vision behind this musical and the story of it?
I mean, the original vision was, I became a Christian when I was 18. I went, in fact, I set foot in a church for the first time ever in my life when I was about 18.
Wow.
And because I wanted to go out with my now wife. And she introduced me to a youth group at the time. And the youth group was really vibrant and it was very genuine and full of great relationships. And it opened my eyes to God. They introduced me to God and the fact that it was relational. And I think I was kind of annoyed that no one had ever told me that. All I'd known of faith and religion, if you like, were learning about the Philistines in RE and all the armies and battles. I had no idea it was relational. So I was kind of annoyed that there was nothing that I had seen in theatre or music or film that kind of told me that it's a relational experience and not a religious set of rules. So I guess the first spark was being narked that I hadn't come across anything that had told me that. And then years later, really, I led worship, I played music, and I think I was sitting in Wembley Arena watching my son in a school's choir concert. And as the lights dimmed, I just had this really vivid picture of an extravagant production that put sort of Jesus on center stage, I guess. And the audience were really engaged with what they saw. And like me, suddenly realized it was a relational thing and it wasn't the set of rules that many of us had been told all their lives. Wow. So that's how it started.
Yeah. That's incredible. I love that tale. And I think how important that is. And I think you're absolutely right. So many, I think, audiences that encounter the gospel outside of the relation of other men are really fixated or kind of really caught up on the fact that this is a text that feels so very outdated, or it feels so very far removed from the realities that we seem to be engaging with in our society. But the truth of the gospel is, as you described, it's actually about the relationship. It is a huge love story, is this Bible, right, if we give it a chance for it to be visible. And it sounds like you took on the brave undertaking to make that visible to people. I can't imagine that was an easy feat. We're talking about you had an initial thought, this is a revelation for your journey, but you've sacrificed so much to keep this alive. What has kept you going and keeping this kind of I must see this through?
Well, I kept seeing it. I kept being inspired by things. I kept seeing it in my head, and always assumed it was for somebody else that I would perhaps come alongside and write some music or play keyboards for or something. I didn't dream at the time that I would be kind of leading it. So I kind of fought against it for many years, trying to find someone else. I think I then got to a point where I felt, I guess I feared standing before God and him saying, "Oh, you idiot, I had such a great thing for you to do, but you didn't realize it was for you. You kept trying to give it away all the time." And I kind of therefore had the confidence, I think, out of that realization to think, actually, yeah, do you know what? I think God wants me to do it. I have no idea how to do it, how I could possibly do it, but I think he wants to walk with me through that. Where I've been trying to kind of steer myself away from it, really, trying to find an excuse not to do it.
Wow. I think so many will resonate with that feeling of that journey. But I like what you said. It's just in terms of when I get to those pearly gates, I do not want God to look at me and say, "I gave you this gift, what you did with it." It reminds me a little bit about the parable of the talents, isn't it? And that's really kind of effectively what you're saying in this kind of big way. Tabitha, like you mentioned, you had your kind of interweaving as to how your path got on this track alongside Richard. What kept you also committed to the vision? Like you said that it moved you when you heard it, but what kept you going? 10 years is a long time to develop something as amazing as this.
Well, yeah, and that's just my side of the coin. I mean, Richard's been journeying with all those thoughts and feelings a lot earlier than he met me.
24 years
24
now.
years for him.
Wow.
So that's how long it took for that journey, even before we met. For me, having that initial, I just knew that God was telling me. I absolutely knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that I needed to be involved. And I didn't know what it would look like. I wasn't trying to push myself or put myself into any situation like that. If anything, my background is performance. I am a performer. I've been professional since I was 15, 16 years old, as a singer and an actress. I was in opera before I was in musical theatre. I was a chorister, head chorister. I won the BBC Choir Girl of the Year competition back in 1995. Wow. So I started on that kind of road of being a young kind of, I was doing recordings for Sony and Decca and things when I was very young, television and radio, but I'd never written, apart from GCSE compositions, to be absolutely honest. I'd written some songs, I'd written some stuff. So this was then a really different side to media than I had previously done. But because of all my experience in shows, knowing about musical theatre, knowing about composition, obviously doing a music degree, you have to do a certain amount of it. And I knew that I had it in there, but I'd not done the practicalities of, putting it on paper. But I can read music, I can write music. Richard, you actually sight read quite well, don't you? For a so-called amateur, he's very good. When he started, as you said, he had his feet firmly in which side of the brain is it, Richard? Would you say he's a designer? He's an entrepreneur. You are many things.
Yeah,
he's got a lot of hats.
Yeah, and it's really helpful now. But I think in the journey, it's quite confusing. I kept writing myself off from, I haven't done a music degree, therefore I'm not qualified to do that. So therefore I must find someone else. And I think it's taken a long time to come this far. I look back now and trust God that it was such the right timing. But also, we've changed. I've changed massively, sort of through the periods. I've grown. My understanding of God has grown, and we're not the same people as we were 10 years ago. And in some ways, it's taken such a long time, and in some ways frustrating. But I think we're also like a fine wine.
I like that. I like that term a lot, and I think just listening to what you're describing in terms of so many things, how many people actually probably feel that God has dropped a very special commission or assignment in their hearts, but they don't, on paper, it might feel as though we are unqualified. And usually that is God's best masterpieces at times, because he's going to get the glory showing what would be impossible under normal circumstances and make something beautiful out of that. I think that alone is so inspiring. And also just like your commitment to the process of what this show has also done in turn to you. Yes, you gave out of yourself to create something and to build something and to curate something. But in the same breath, you allowed also the process of getting involved in that to really kind of mold and shape you. What do you think have been some of the things that you've noticed in yourself personally? And this is a question for the both of you, that has changed as a result of getting involved with this project.
Can I answer first?
What, for me?
No. Collaboration, I will say. For me, I've had to, you've done teams and stuff like that before, and obviously working in theatre, you collaborate with your people on stage hugely. But it was the joining of our skills. Me on my own, I couldn't do this. You on your own, you couldn't do this. Well, you probably could. I tell a lie. But to get together, we are stronger.
Yeah.
And it's not just us as well, that, within our families, within our team, what God has designed to put together and help us in our communication, in our skill sets, I've gained qualification, but I disqualified. I had a prophetic word over me when I was a teenager, And I thought, but that's not what I do. That's not what I do. Someone said, your music's going to be heard in an arena like this. Is that my music? Yes, your music, your composition. And I only remembered a couple of years ago, and I'd completely written it off, going, "Oh, that can't be right," because I'm a singer. I sing other people's music. So immediately, do you remember? I told you a couple of years ago. I thought, oh my goodness, that's actually there. It is. The proof's in the pudding. It's out, and we can so easily disqualify ourselves. And throughout the Bible, it's littered with people who say, I can't do that. I'm not a speaker. I'm not a this. I'm not a that. And in some ways, we have qualifications. Like I have music qualifications, but I'd never done it before, really. And the same with you. You have huge amounts of skills.
So a few years ago, we mapped out all the prophetic words we'd had. We got together and typed out all the prophetic words, and we mapped it out put it out on the floor, and just like looked at all the journey from years ago when things like didn't make sense. Well, that doesn't make sense, and then you look back and you kind of piece it all together, and you just think, wow, God orchestrated all this amazingly. I mean, my background is automotive. I was a director of car design, and I thought, well, how can that fit? But it's project management. It's creative. It's very collaborative, as Tabby was saying earlier. I look back now, and at the time thinking it didn't fit at all with building a production, but actually the skill sets have worked really, really well. And I think, we could never have done that in the natural. We've never connected those dots. But by being sort of dumbfounded with stuff and just stuck, and you look back and you just see God. You just see how God has, like, I had you then, sort of thing.
I think that's so true, isn't it? And I think many of us come to the realization, I think, especially, like, I love that you laid it all out. Like, let's have a kind of a reflection on kind of the steps that God has brought us through, the words that he's given, the kind of pillar moments in life. And you realize that absolutely nothing is wasted. How encouraging that is, and how encouraging that must feel when the realization, I'm using those very skills that I was operating in a whole other lifetime, and God has made it useful here. It's just so, it blows me away of how amazing kind of God is. Let's talk a little bit about kind of just like the way that you guys got involved with, I mean, the production levels are so high with this piece. From what I've seen of it, it looks incredible. It fits absolutely comfortably from all of what I've seen in West End. Interestingly enough, Tabitha, my favorite musical theatre show is Phantom of the Opera. So to hear that you were actually Christine is a little bit fangirling over here. So forgive me if I can't hold it in. It's
photos. You know,
and I will receive that. Thank you so much. I absolutely love that musical so much. And so when I saw the production level and that kind of just the standard of excellence of Love Beyond, that was just, I was like, yes, this is exactly what we should be doing. The church should be producing artistry and standard within due form as such. And I guess one of my questions, did you only cast Christians for the roles? And when you got this onto the platform and into the arena across like West End and obviously these very kind of renowned venue spaces, like what was that transition like? What did that entail to get there? Because this is something I think other young aspiring, musical theatre actors or directors, playwrights, that's the goal of where they're aiming for. How did you get there?
Well, I think we wrestled with, should it be a Christian company in terms of actors and creatives, and actually we decided against that. Actually, so half the cast were Christians, half weren't. We wanted the best talent, the best actors, the best singing for the role, trusting in the creative that we'd written.
Yeah,
but, a great actor to sing something that we'd written would be better than a Christian who wasn't quite as good, but they were Christian.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think with my background, I mean, I've been blessed enough to have a pool of people and a talent that I know can pull off certain roles and do things. But at the same time, when we were kind of auditioning people, we'd gone through quite a journey. Is that, should we keep this And I think that's part of our development on the journey, isn't it?
Definitely.
Actually, in how we've grown. And I think have confidence in the fact that if people don't have their own faith, that they will learn as part of the journey. And one thing that I have absolutely loved in kind of either directing or musical directing, the few productions that we've done so far, is just the opportunity to share our faith, to share our testimony. And they're getting paid to sit there and listen to me. Sorry, but I've got to tell you what this is, because as an actor, they have to understand their character. They have to move in that realm and that genre. And we found that some people that had no faith, in fact, some that were complete atheists, have had their mindset entirely disrupted, turned upside down, and come to faith. And that, for me, as a direct result with my friends and people that I've known and other people that we've got to know through the process, that's been so exciting. I've loved that.
I can't even imagine. That sounds so, and actually that's exactly what it should be doing. And I love that you said that actually it was a gamble between, do we kind of subsidize talent because we want to be comfortable with other Christians kind of at the helm of this project, or do we go to the best talent and we bring them the gospel anyway? And what you had was an opportunity to really effectively touch the lives and expose the gospel to the people that probably needed to hear it, who would have never heard it, would have never been exposed to it, certainly in the manner and the fashion that would have actually related to them. I love how you describe that, Tabitha. These are your friends. These are people that you do life with. That's what really matters, doesn't it?
Certainly is.
Well, one of the challenges that we had is that in my mind, I only ever saw it huge. And the sound world that we'd created, it was huge and epic. It's like, well, how can we try it out in like a small venue? How can you actually try it? Because it needs to be huge. So our first ever tryout of it was at the Brighton Centre with an audience of nearly 3,000 people.
Wow.
And an orchestra. That was our tryout, I guess, just to see would it work. And that took. It was very humbling, the people who come alongside, people in church, our own churches, our own sort of families and friends who wanted to invest and support it. Hugely humbling to see financial support to put it on as a trial. And it worked great. I mean, and that our confidence grew. And the following year we did Wembley Arena for a couple of nights. And it's all been self-funded and just an amazing journey in itself. And I've learned lots from other people about sort of stewarding resources and things, that I wasn't very good at, but just seeing other people model it, the whole journey has been so much for us as well.
Life-changing.
We've really grown and changed, and we look back and think, wow, just like I had no idea how I would have done that, sort of, had I not met these people and seen this, and God taught me this, and God took us to the struggling point here, then there's a revelation we had about here, and it's just been life-changing itself. The journey has meant just as much for us personally.
And it sounds like oh my god, that was going to be my next question. How did you navigate that this pregnant with, or like this incredible gift that you were about to kind of unleash onto the world with this production, and then for it all to come to a bit of a grinding halt? Like, when was that when things had to cease? What happened for you guys during that period of time?
I can say that.
Well, I guess we'd been chasing opportunities in America and other sort of touring opportunities. And internally, I'm getting frustrated. Things aren't quite happening as fast as I would want them in my world. And getting frustrated by that. And then lockdown happens. And you think, thank you, Lord, that we hadn't invested and that got other people's money involved in shows that now had to be cancelled. And, it financially broke lots of companies. So again, just look back and say, well, thank you, Lord, that you knew a little bit better than us, and that's quite handy to have you on our board of directors.
Richard was champing at the bit and trying to push it forward, but I was chucking out a couple of sprogs at the time that are in, you sort of
yes.
It's bringing your kids to work day to day.
Absolutely.
For me, I wouldn't have put anything on the brakes of it, but God knew what I needed to go through as a mother, how I needed to transition. I suppose this helped my transition. I didn't even realize I was from, being, I'd worked since I was a teen and never stopped working. And suddenly I'm pregnant, I'm having a kid, I'm coming out of the West End, and the West End is not conducive to families, because you're doing 8 shows a week and people see their kids for like half an hour when they get home from school before they've got to go out again. And now they do Sunday shows. You can do double shows on a Saturday and do Sunday shows. You can never see your kids. It was a real decision to say, well, that's the end of that, because I want a family. But then I didn't have a plan as to what I was going to do. Not a chance, but God knew. And, for me, I suppose it just took me so easily from one time in my life into a very new season. And as Richard said, a real season of discovery, really discovering myself, my capabilities, my limitations. Also, I only found out last year I had an official diagnosis of being ADHD. And that, for anyone who knows anything about neurodiversity and that kind of thing, was a massive thing. And I think, going back to collaboration, I think my lovely big brother here, who can take the mick out of me for being who I am, has helped journey through that process. But I'm working with someone who is neurodiverse as well, must be pretty difficult at times.
Not a problem.
Oh, goodness me.
But that we are wrestling and dealing with things in my personal life and my home life, with work life, with earning enough money while we are developing Love Beyond. And there is so much to balance. I don't know where I'm going here because of my brain, but that's just another element of discovery in this time for me.
It's really good to hear that, because I think what we see is the finished product, but people really have very little understanding unless they are exposed to conversations like this, where you get an insight as to what really went into it. The end result of Love Beyond, it's brilliance. You see it polished, the finished product at the end. That's the cherry on the cake in terms of actually the journeys that people have had to go through to get there. And what you shared, adds such nuance, such richness to actually what that cost you to produce something as brilliant as that. And I guess my next question would be, transformation seems to be quite a central theme to Love Beyond. And you've been speaking about so much about how, even as individuals who are, the originators of this beautiful production, is all been about transformation. Do you feel that there is still room for this message to kind of continue on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can continually change as well. So unlike film, you commit it and that's it. It's unchangeable. Whereas at the moment, we're able to make tweaks and things. As our theology changes, as we get to know God in a slightly different way, we can feed that in. So we've done a production in April of a concert version of Love Beyond, and we introduced some changes lyrically, some few things that we'd want to emphasize slightly differently. And even now there's like, we want to tweak that a little bit again, because I'm not sure we explained that bit very clearly now. And so it's a constant evolving presentation, I guess, of our own faith. So I'm not sure it's ever polished and ever finished.
That's the beauty of musical theatre, though, that even in previews, people have been known to cut songs, to cut characters, to really mess around with things. And we've gone through quite a few years of 3 incarnations, let's say, interestingly.
Yeah. And lockdown was a big part of that. So in lockdown, sort of Tabby and I, we'd usually put past our Mondays to get together and to pray and worship, and that's when we've had a lot of our breakthroughs, I think, in terms of story in it, and sort of structure in it. It was like worshiping on the Monday, sometimes drawing, painting, dreaming, just working together and then thinking, actually, do you know what? I think we need to do this slightly differently. So lockdown enabled that. And then out of that, we've created a far more cinematic sound score that's now all pre-recorded. Gives us more opportunities to do, to put it on as a performance in different places now, because we could just rock up with a cast and use a soundtrack. So yeah, it's evolving all the time, I think, as we evolve.
I love that. And I guess, like, this is probably a question again to the both of you. In musical theatre is a very distinctive form of storytelling. You have the synergy with music, and you have a script, and you have actors, and people are drawn into a world in a way that is very different to seeing kind of a static screen. How do you feel that kind of like this form or this platform or forum of storytelling is different from others? Do you think it's more effective than others, just in your view?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's nothing like live theatre. So even regardless of the musical content, seeing people in character, performing right before your eyes. I mean, there's a wonderful thing about going to the cinema, isn't there? And even having that experience. But there's something about theatre that's visceral, especially the Americans. They want to see the sweat, they want to see the spit coming out your mouth. They want to see that connection. And as an actress, night after night, honing in on, like, character, say, of Christine, she goes through so much. She fears she's about to be raped and killed and hounded by this man in a mask who had pretended to be her father, and this abusive, narcissistic kind of emotionally intense relationship is built up, and people, that's just the story, and the acting add music to that. And for some people, musical theatre is one of those genres where they're acting and then suddenly they're singing a song and people go, oh, that's so unbelievable. And yet there's another part of the population that can just immerse themselves within a story, within the narrative, and take what is presented on stage and really enter into that. And part of our big vision that we would love in the future to be able to see this 360 degrees in the round, with full immersive theatre experience, with smells, with rumbling seats. We've with light shows, with drones. We've gone through so many artistic, creative kind of dreaming big in our heads. And yet actually musical theatre, just in its simplest form, the music, the emotion of the song, musical storytelling can be such a powerful narrative that people get lost in the story. And for people that don't know the story, they might react to it in such a different way from people that have always known the story, but still may react to it in a really fresh way. We've had some testimony of that, haven't we?
I mean, I come from it from a slightly different angle. I come at it more from the music telling the story side of it. As a child, I used to sort of sit with my ear to the radio, or the radiogram, I guess, back in those days, just getting really involved in what I heard. I could always picture what I hear. And in the 70s and 80s, there was concept albums that told stories through prog rock and different things. And I loved that. So my angle has probably been slightly more biased towards the music telling the story. And this is where we work great together. So our soundtrack, I wanted to be able to hear the soundtrack in the car with no lyrics and know what's happening, because the orchestrations is taking us through the drama. And so that's slightly differently, sort of how we see things, but together, put that together with the acting that Tabby is so passionate about.
Yeah. Acting through song particularly is a big that is how I'm geared, that's how I'm wired, and taking the music and the acting and making something really what's the word I'm looking for, authentic.
And a lot of the time we associate this type of storytelling, theatre as a form in itself is kind of a reflection of society. Do you think that Love Beyond reflects on some contemporary social dynamics? And if so, in which ways would you say that it kind of connects in that way?
Not sure I understand the question.
So in other words, so a lot of the time when we see what's happening in the theatre, it's almost like watching parables on a stage. Is there a way that you think that Love Beyond is telling parables of kind of like what people are experiencing in modern day life? Is there a kind of like a reflection of
I hope so, yeah.
Yeah,
I hope so. I hope people can relate to the characters that that are relating with Jesus on stage. I hope that they're relating that, that could be me.
Yeah.
With costume wise, we always kept away from historical costumes.
Amazing.
So it's contemporary costumes, because we've always wanted people to think, well, that could be me. Jesus could be talking to me right now, the way he's talking to that lady or to that man.
It's a story of humanity and humanity's relationship with God. And of course, as humanity, we have evolved in so many ways since early biblical times, even through the narrative of the Bible. How much had humanity changed in that timeline, whatever timeline you think that is? That's controversial. But if you're talking about from we are telling a story from the absolute seed of the beginning of time to the absolute culmination and end of the world, and projecting into the future, whatever your kind of theological views around that, which we've actually tried to not be very specific in the unknown theological views, if you see what I mean. We stick to the absolute essence of the story and of the love story between God and humanity. So, as you say, bringing that back to a relatable experience, we have obviously so many characters from the Bible that we could take inspiration from, and we could have chosen another 10 of them and made 5 musicals just in an afternoon, just on the so much rich kind of breakdown of humanity that the Bible shows. But we've tried to take different stories from the difference of the first performance to our next incarnation in Wembley. We've written in Saul, particularly because I wanted to show the change, and I think, Richard, you were pretty much very unanimously and kind of okay with that, let's say, seeing the change of someone who hadn't liked Jesus and what was shown of Jesus, and was completely against it. Not just that, but actually persecuting the church. Seeing that change in one song on stage as he has his encounter with Jesus. And that is so different from all the people that saw the miracles and were so taken in, and then taken in by Satan's kind of deception into kind of killing him on the cross. But then you have the believers and they're really going for it, and then you see someone's change right before your eyes to faith. And that is such a disrupting moment for someone that I hope people will be able to relate to that as well.
I think boldly, that's such a great example to have used, if that was kind of like a new addition into kind of what Love Beyond was doing, especially as you said, like Saul was quite unique in terms of completely anti. And I think we're living in a society that is very anti in some ways. And to see that even there, someone could still engage with and be encountered with such a great love is a powerful example and parallel that I think you're right. This is definitely something that parallels with what's happening in society and how people are finding faith today. Tabitha, I want to ask you, this might be kind of an interesting question for someone that is, as you've expressed, you have a long-standing relationship with musical theatre and a career. This is really your heartbeat in so many ways. Did you ever feel, and this is something we commonly find, I think, no matter what field that you're occupying, is imposter syndrome. Did you ever feel that in terms of, you are clearly a godly woman, your faith and your identity is clearly very, very content in who Christ is and what he is for you? How did you find like kind of managing that integrity, working within the West End, which can come with a lot of varied kind of cultural expectations and expressions? Yeah. So I that'll be a question I imagine a lot of our listeners, those that are looking to aspire to kind of occupy space in those arenas, would love to hear, like, how do you do it? How did you do it?
Again, I think I have transformed, let's say, from the person that I was 30 years ago, when I started out. I think in such a diverse group of people that you are likely to meet in theatre, as probably the same in any office now, but creatives are a funny bunch, aren't we? I think it is such a different culture. It is a massively different culture from some places and some places of work, and in what's expectation. You sit around in your pants with people having a cup of tea, and then you got to throw weird clothes on, run around on stage, sweat for 3 hours. Bare your soul and more, and then come off, get a train home. And once that wig cap comes off and you take some stage makeup off, you do a few signatures at stage door, and then you walk out and you're completely unknown. That's the beauty of that work, actually, that you don't have the fame that's associated with it. But oh goodness, it is such a unique experience, I think. In media, I think, having done television, some bits of television, a bit of filming, but done a lot of theatre, there is nothing like it. As they say, the smell of the grease paint and the roar of the crowd. It's intoxicating in a way that I think other forms of entertainment have a different pace. Interestingly, I was in Les Mis, the stage show, Les Miserables, and Les Mis the movie, and they couldn't have been more different from the sense of direction. Obviously, the pace of filming something over a few weeks, which in the theatre goes like that. But from a Christian perspective, sorry, going back to your original question, I've come across, well, my own thoughts have molded and changed, but other people's expectation of what it is and the difficulties you might face and come across have been very different from my experiences and my own preconceived ideas, I suppose. And I don't know where I can go with this, but I think showing Jesus's love, acceptance, complete acceptance and inclusion of everybody you come across has to be essential in any working environment. And the theatre is no different. When you know that the guy behind the lights, the person in the booth selling tickets, the person selling the ice creams, the people doing the lighting, if every single one of them you see as Jesus, that's got to transform the way that you work in that environment. You just have to love, 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 and love some more. And when you get annoyed with people, and when you're in that tight space, you have to offer so much love, and you just hope you get it in return.
Guys, this has been incredible, just hearing both your stories and your journey. And before we close off, I just want to ask, what's next for Love Beyond? This feels like it's not finished yet. What are thoughts with regards to what's going to happen next with Love Beyond?
Yeah, definitely not finished yet. Again, it's one of those grappling things. We've had so many prophetic words and words of knowledge from strangers all around the world. Wow. About who have never met us before, didn't know who we were, about sort of building something that's going to go global. It's going to be on global stages and things. And what do you do with that when you're here and you have these encouraging words that say you're going to be over here? And that's what we're currently grappling with. We're currently looking at or scoping out the viability of a UK tour. So taking it into large venues around the UK. We're scoping it out now for middle of 24. In parallel, we're talking to people in the US about how Love Beyond could work in the US. I think it would work very, very well personally, but I'm biased. So we're working on various things in parallel. Also, we're going to be sort of developing it slightly differently. There's a few things that we've learned that perhaps weren't quite as clear as we'd want them to be theologically. So yeah, it's just non-stop, really, in between day jobs and family and children and everything else.
And real life, really. But I'm so grateful to have heard just kind of the story of this is so special. I sense that personally myself, just listening to your story and the purpose and the mission of what reach that Love Beyond is going to impact, I believe is just at this stage like unfathomable, and I expect God is going to do great things with it. Thank you so much for joining us today on Faith in Media's podcast. So we got to hear your story. We'll be following avidly your social media sites. You mentioned that you'll be publishing kind of all of the updates with regards to what's happening with the progress of Love Beyond on your Facebook page and on your website. So anybody that's interested to follow the work of Tabitha and Richard and their work with Love Beyond, please make sure that you are following them. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute blessing. All right. Thank you so much. And I hope you get to keep up to date with the progress that you're doing. All the very best. God bless and much love.
Thanks, Carla. Lovely speaking to you.
You've been listening to Faith in Media with Carla Adebekun. Make sure you catch our episodes and hit subscribe. Please share and leave us a comment. Christians in Media is a UK charity that supports, encourages and inspires Christians from across the ever-changing media landscape. Find out more at www.christiansinmedia.co.uk and connect with us via our socials.